We'll now proceed to the text of Major General Thomas Taverney. Major General Thomas Taverney is a Major General of the U.S. Air Force, and he was a former Vice Commander of the Airspace of Colorado. He has earned many medals and decorations for his work, and let me now translate into Greek, General. Ο υποστράτηγος της Αμερικανικής Αεροπορίας, ο κύριος Τόμας Ταβερνέ, υπήρξε διοικητής της διαστημικής βάσης του Κολοράτο, έχει λάβει πληθώρα παρασίμων και τιμητικών διακρίσεων και είναι ένας επιφανής επιστήμων στον χώρο του διαστήματος. Major General, please proceed.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having me here to be part of this great vision. Great visions, like Humanitas, are things that help steer a society and get them to become even greater. And it's humbling to be talking in the home of Hipparchus. And some of you probably know who he is, but many of you don't. He was the very first astronomer. About 150 BC, he mapped the stars. He calculated the distance to the moon. And in his spare time, he invented trigonometry so he could actually process the data that he had. And so for all the great astronomers that followed, Galileo, Kepler, Newton, Ptolemy, they all owe the beginnings of the ability to look at space to Hipparchus. What I'd like to talk about today is a little bit about how space has changed. When I was a young boy in the 50s, we read Robert Heinlein, Asimov, Jules Verne, and we saw that it was science fiction. During my life, I was lucky enough to see it turn into science fact, and it all turned in October of 1957 when the Russians launched a satellite called Sputnik. From that time on, we have progressed and integrated space into our daily lives. And space has become absolutely integral in our society and every day. And I'd like to talk about some of the systems that have made this possible. The first system I'd like to talk about is the global positioning system. The global positioning system has taken the where are you out of where we are and tells us how to get places. It's hard to believe how we operated before we had GPS. And there are a lot of people in this world that actually believe GPS is the unit that they carry in their hand, which it really isn't. GPS is a set of satellites on orbit that actually fly a clock. And what that clock does is it keeps very accurate time. And since there are, right now we have 32 satellites on orbit, using 29 of those satellites, you can get 3 or 4 of them, and you know their exact position with the time differential, so you can get your exact position. And it has taken, so we don't ever have to ask where we are anymore. Hikers, boaters can take GPS units out and never get lost. The other thing, it allows us to find places we're going to. You always have directions. You can actually ask Siri, but you can punch it into your GPS and find directions and how you're going in these GPS units in the ground, but all based on those satellites in orbit. GPS also has accurate timing, and it's used in banks, investment areas. So GPS spans everything we do in life. It's basically a utility and has changed the way we live. It has created billion-dollar industries. If when the Air Force first put GPS up on orbit, we decided to charge for it, we would never have to ask for a tax dollar again, but we didn't. But it's become so important that many nations are now pursuing their own navigation systems. The European Union is going to fly Galileo. It already has the first 4 up on orbit. China has a system called Baidu that they're going to fly navigation satellites. Russia has GLONASS, and India has NAVSIC. So sometime in the future, while we do really well with GPS now, GPS is going to have hundreds of global positioning systems, navigation are going to have hundreds of systems on orbit. And the accuracy of that GPS with the many, many satellites we have to choose is even going to be better. In the future, I believe we'll have Uber-like cars. In fact, we probably won't have to own a car. We'll enter into the process. We'll say we want to go somewhere, and a car, automatically driven, will come up in front of our house. We'll get in that car, and it'll take us to where we have to go. And then when we want to go somewhere else, another car will come and pick us up. And instead of having to drive that car, we'll be able to sit in that car and do work if we want to, read a book, expand our knowledge, and it's going to be a great change in the world. Another element that space has changed is in the ability for people to see knowledge, to see information, to see data. In 1969, a government organization called ARPA developed a thing called ARPANET to communicate among everybody in a network, and that grew into the Internet. The Internet now is almost a nation in and of itself. It has 2.4 billion users, which is a little more than a third of the people in the world. And as we expand communication satellites, we're going to get that knowledge, the ability to access it through the Internet, to more and more people. We're going to change, it's going to change the world to where anybody, anytime, any place can find out almost anything. And hopefully that breaks down borders between all the countries. There are objects of use, people who work in networks on the Internet who span many different countries, many different nationalities, but they work in their passion and common purpose. And what better ideal could you have than have borders not be relevant, and have people be able to join in common love of knowledge in their fields. And that's going to be where the Internet goes as we get more and more communication satellites up and bring in more and more remote areas where people can see this information. A farmer can know from space with an infrared satellite how he is watering his fields, and know when he's overwatering or underwatering. Allows much better use of water. So space impacts everything we do in life every day. And in the early days of space, when I first entered space, there were really two nations that did anything in space, the Soviet Union and the United States. And basically it was only the military that did that. That's since changed a lot. Now there are 170 nations that use space data of some sort. There are 60 nations who actually own at least one satellite. And there are 11 nations that can launch rockets. This has truly become a global area. And there's three basic groups that pursue space. There's the national security space, which is basically the governmental, the intelligence, the military. And that's how space started. And there still is work in that area, but they are no longer the dominant player. The area that's now the dominant player is commercial space. Commercial space is flying communication satellites all over the world. Commercial space flies low-altitude imaging satellites that are just a phenomenal quality. So you can get, like I said, a farmer can get images of his farm area and know if he's watering it properly, when it's ready to, when the vegetation is ready to grow. So commercial space has become a very large part of what we do. And in commercial space, they are now doing everything from launching their own rockets, commercial rockets, to flying communication satellites and imaging satellites. The other area, which is civil space. In the United States, that's NASA. But every country has a civil space where we look at how things are going to be in the future. They fly the future systems. They fly technology. They look for life in deep space. In our country, NASA has an organization called JPL, in Pasadena, and they have flown multiple missions to Mars. They've flown the first system that's left our solar system. We've looked at the moons of Jupiter. So civil space does things that are amazing and fun. They had the space shuttle, so they had the first system that could actually fly and return to Earth. They're the people that have the manned space program, that have people that are going to go explore. And at some point, we have put men on the moon, and in the future, we're going to put people on Mars. Now, one thing that's interesting about the mission to the moon is there's a commonality there between Heptopolis and the mission to the moon, and that it was based on a grand challenge. Like Paul has this grand vision and challenge of Heptopolis, President Kennedy in 1961 gave a grand challenge to the United States, which is to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, by 1969, and bring them back safely. And that grand challenge changed the world in a lot of ways, because that grand challenge required the use of 400,000 engineers. Those engineers were trained to take risks. Those engineers developed new systems. They were not afraid to challenge anything. And those engineers, when the Apollo program was over, went throughout companies in the United States. And it's those engineers that developed electronic circuits and microelectronics and the things that allow us now to have in a phone, which we couldn't even have on the ground. In 1969, the most powerful computer in the United States was a Cray computer, and now my iPhone has as much power as that computer. So it's amazing that a grand challenge does more than just the grand challenge. It builds people. It builds people who are innovators. It builds people who are willing to take risks. It builds people who have courage. And those people, even after the grand vision and grand challenge is completed, can change the way your country looks.
Η πρόγνωση του καιρού, η επιστήμη και η εξερεύνηση εδρεύουν όλες στο διάστημα, σε μικρό ή μεγαλύτερο βαθμό.
So I'll talk a little bit about how space has become globalized. As I said early, two superpowers, Russia and the United States, had all this capability, but that's changed significantly. The fact is that the United States, while we still have a large amount of satellites on orbit, and I think there are about 1,400 to 1,700 satellites on orbit, and the United States has 300 of them, but many of these satellites have now launched by other countries. A lot of countries buy satellites from providers and operate them, and some can actually build them themselves. And that's where the world is going, is that space is globalized. Every country in the world has access to the data. Every country in the world knows how to build systems. The critical system for any space system is the launch system. And that is the hardest system to build a rocket to get things on orbit. Obviously, Newton told us how to build a rocket, because he said for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. But basically what you do when you build a rocket is you have an explosion. That explosion is big enough to get you into orbit. And it requires speeds, just to get to orbit, requires a speed of about 7.8 kilometers a second. 7.8 kilometers in 1 second. That's what it takes to get to orbit. To get to Mars, you have to be at about 16.5 kilometers a second. So that is a very hard thing to do. In fact, when the U.S. was first developing rockets, our first 13 all failed. 13 in a row failures. If that happened in today's world, we never would have kept pursuing it. But it was at a time when the world was willing to take more risk than they do now. So now we have many countries that can build these rockets, 11. Ariane is probably the leading commercial launch company in the world. It's a European Union company. In the U.S., we're even going to more commercial launch systems. We've gone away from the government-owned launch systems. I'm not sure how many of you heard of Elon Musk and SpaceX, but he is the new innovator, and he builds the systems commercially and sells them to the government commercially rather than having government developed. Blue Origin with Bezos, who is the founder of Amazon, is also building new launch vehicles and actually want to fly people. So you or I or anybody when he gets his systems developed, to go and take a ride on one of his rockets and go see space. And that's pretty exciting. So the world of launch has changed from a world, it's still very complicated, and failures happen. In fact, SpaceX just had a failure, but getting onto orbit is the first key thing, and that's now not only become global, it's become global and commercial. The biggest satellites that have become global and commercial are communication satellites. There are lots of vendors that do this. The three biggest that I think cover 80% of the market are Intelsat, SES Americom, and Eutelsat. And those three companies launch about 80 to 90% of all the communication satellites in the world. So launch is one of the things that's become global and commercial, as different from the other thing that's happened is the governments used to buy satellite buses. A bus is what flies the payload. It provides all the structure around your payload. And now commercial entities like Orbital ATK, Airbus in Europe, and many other places around the world build these satellite buses, and they do them more efficiently. In fact, the Galileo bus is being built in Germany. So we now can buy these satellite buses cheaper from commercial entities, and so space is getting to be lower cost, much lower cost. The speed of technology improvements, as we know, has just rocketed. Technology keeps moving faster than we can keep up with it. And so we're now looking at building smaller satellites, much smaller. In fact, there are people who build nanosatellites that are 1 kilogram. We used to build the satellite that used to detect heat on the ground, which could detect things like fires, explosions, and weather, are in an orbit that we call geosynchronous. It's 22,300 miles above the Earth. And from there, they can look down and see explosions, fires, weather, and predict that. So it's pretty incredible. And the satellites that used to do that used to weigh 1,000 kilograms, and now they weigh 100 kilograms. So as we go to smaller systems, space is going to get crowded. So I will give you the challenges of the future. Space is contested, congested, and competitive. It's congested because when we first went to space, we thought it was going to be kind of free and easy to use forever. And now it's very crowded. We have, I know many of you might have seen the movie Gravity, and there's a lot of truth in that. There's a little bit of drama, Hollywood drama in that, right? But it is relatively accurate. There are on the order of 23,000 objects on orbit that we monitor today. 23,000 objects. Remember, I said there are 14 to 1,700 active satellites. So over 21,000 objects up there that are just space junk. They're old boosters, they're old satellites that we didn't do anything about. And this is a problem now. And when they run into each other, they even create more problems. About a year and a half ago, a Russian meteorological satellite accidentally crashed another satellite, and instead of having 2 space objects, now we have 10,000 space objects. So it's terrible. And right now we can track items that are 10 centimeters in size. We believe that there probably are more like 500,000 objects up there, not just the 23,000 we track. And so we're implementing a new system and trying to do this internationally. This is a partnership and a global partnership, because since everybody's in space, everybody's space systems are threatened by this space debris. And so we're building a system that can track at least 250,000 of those, so at least to 3 centimeters. Eventually we'll get better, and then we have built a new station in the United States that we're inviting international partners to, that we have commercial partners, so Intelsat, Eutelsat, and SES Americom are there, so that we can share the data that everybody has on all this debris in order to try to avoid crashing into it. In the future, we're going to be smarter. We know that for low-altitude satellites, we're going to save fuel, re-enter them, and burn them up. And for satellites that are geosynchronous or 22,000 miles, we're going to shoot them up higher. But in the past, we haven't been good stewards of space, so all this junk is still up there.
το
and it's
μεταβαλλόμενο
dangerous.
τοπίο του
So,
διαστήματος.
in fact, when we launch systems, we have to track all that to make sure we don't launch into one of those and have a
Εκούσια ή
failure on
ακούσια,
launch.
η ελεύθερη και
So
ανοιχτή
that's a
χρήση
big
του
problem for the
διαστήματος
future, is
απειλείται
the
κάθε μέρα.
congestion in space. It's a real threat to our freedom of use of space.
Κυβερνοαπειλές.
Competitive is a good
Κατά
thing.
τα τελευταία
It
50
used to be
χρόνια,
that there were only
ο
two
κόσμος
countries in
εξαρτάται
space
όλο και
and they
περισσότερο
kind
από
of
τους
dictated the
υπολογιστές,
terms.
το
Now the whole
διαδίκτυο
world's
και
in
την ανοιχτή
space and
πρόσβαση
everybody
στα
has an equal
δεδομένα.
say. So this is a good
Οι
thing. We now have
υπολογιστές
competition.
χρησιμοποιούνται σήμερα παντού,
In fact,
από τις κλειδαριές
one of the
στις
things I
πόρτες
do
μας
for a
και τα
living is I
συστήματα
build
ελέγχου
satellite
του κινητήρα
payloads, and
στα
we had a
αυτοκίνητά
launch
μας.
on a French rocket, on the
Μέχρι
Ariane rocket.
το
It was actually
δίκτυο
flown there
ηλεκτρικής
by a
ενέργειας που
Russian
τροφοδοτεί
plane,
με
the
ηλεκτρική ενέργεια
Antonov.
τα σπίτια
This
μας.
was unheard of in the past. Now global
Δυστυχώς, η διάδοση
cooperation
των
in space
υπολογιστών
is
στην
becoming
καθημερινή
more and
μας
more
ζωή
normal.
συνέβη χωρίς καμία συνείδηση
But
των
space is
τροτών
also
σημείων
becoming
που σχετίζονται
competitive,
με αυτά τα
and
συστήματα.
there are risks in that
Μέχρι τα τελευταία
there
χρόνια
are
δεν
countries that
έχουμε
are
λάβει σοβαρά
developing
υπόψη το
systems to
ενδεχόμενο
negate
ότι τα συστήματα αυτά θα μπορούσαν
systems
να
in
δεχτούν
space.
επίθεση και να τύχουν
China in
εκμετάλλευσης.
2007 demonstrated a low
Τα
altitude
συστήματα
intercept of one of their own
πληροφορικής που επηρεάζουν
satellites,
τόσο πολύ το
created
μεγαλύτερο
a lot
μέρος
of
της
debris, but they showed that they
καθημερινής
can
μας
shoot
ζωής
down
και
satellites.
τα εθνικά συστήματα
Russia
ασφαλείας
in the 60s
NSS
had co-orbital systems
είναι
that could shoot
ευάλωτα
down
σε
satellites and can still
επιθέσεις
do it.
και γι'
And
αυτό
then
η
China
πρόθεση της
demonstrated that they
εκπαίδευσης
could
στους
do this in
υπολογιστές σε όλο τον
geosynchronous
κόσμο
orbit. So
έχει
every
γίνει
satellite
και
up
θα
there is a
συνεχίσει να
threat.
είναι
And if
ένα
not
πεδίο
to
μάχης για το μέλλον.
destruction, to at
Ως εκ
least
τούτου,
being
στο σημερινό
interfered
κόσμο
with.
απαιτούνται
A more likely
προστασία του
occurrence is
κυβερνοχώρου,
not that they would shoot you
αντίμετρα
down, but they'd
και
go up,
αποτρεπτικά μέτρα,
like
ιδίως
China has
καθώς οι κακόμουνες
proposed, with
δραστηριότητες
little
αυξάνονται.
jammers and put them around your satellite and make your satellites not work. Now, in a world that we're
εμπόδια για την
dependent on
είσοδο
things
στο
like
πεδίο της
GPS
μάχης στον
and worldwide
κυβερνοχώρο είναι
communications,
ελάχιστα. Και σχεδόν
having
κάθε
our
μικρό
satellites not
έθνος ή
work
ομάδα
is
μπορεί να
bad. In
αναπτύξει
fact,
τις ικανότητες
Russia
να
parked one of their
εκτελέσει
satellites in
κυβερνοεπιθέσεις
between
στην
two
ψηφιακή
commercial
υποδομή των ΗΠΑ
two Eutelsat
και άλλων
satellites, and
ισχυρών
people were
κρατών.
concerned that they were going to go and affect their operation.
Εκτός από την εθνική
So we've been
ασφάλεια και άλλα
working
στρατιωτικά
worldwide
συστήματα
on
και
having
εθνικά
space
κρίσιμες
treaties to
υποδομές
say
μας
that there's
βρίσκονται
we
σε
want to
κίνδυνο.
assure freedom of access in space,
Συστήματα όπως τα
especially for
δίκτυα ηλεκτρικής
commercial.
ενέργειας,
How do we get to that
συστήματα
point when we
επικοινωνιών,
have
εγκαταστάσεις
freedom of
υγείας,
access in space
δίκτυα
and let this
επικοινωνίας,
threat not be
συστήματα
a threat to
επιχειρήσεων
at
και
least the commercial
χρηματοδοτικών
systems?
οργανισμών,
We know ultimately they
συστήματα
could be a threat
υγείας,
to military
βάσεις
systems.
εμπορικών
We certainly
δεδομένων,
want
ακόμη και
our
προσωπικά
commercial
δεδομένα
systems free.
κινδυνεύουν.
And we haven't got there yet.
Βεβαίως,
That's
με
something
ένα
we have to
ανεπαρκές
do.
εμπόδιο στην
It's
είσοδο,
absolutely essential
στο
for
μέλλον θα δούμε τον
the free use
πολλαπλασιασμό
of
των
space in the
επιθέσεων στον
future.
κυβερνοχώρο
We don't want
και
to
των
have space
πράξεων
wars. We don't
υποκλοπής.
want to have problems up there. We want everybody to be able to use space to their
Οι
own benefit.
κυβερνοεπιθέσεις
And so
σε
that's where we're going in the
ψηφιακές
future.
υποδομές του κόσμου βρίσκονται σε εξέλιξη και αποδεικνύονται
Space has changed our
επικίνδυνες.
life, and it's going to change it even more in the
Αυτές οι
future. We keep
επιδρομές
building
και
better
οι
and better
επιχειρούμενες
systems.
επιδρομές
And so
θα μπορούσαν να προέρχονται από οποιοσδήποτε μεμονωμένος
the key
hacker,
here is that the
εταιρικούς
knowledge
πράκτορες
that
κατασκοπίας,
these
μη
systems
κρατικούς
create
φορείς,
are
από
available to
δυνάμεις του
anybody
κυβερνοχώρου ενός άλλου
worldwide.
κράτους.
And that knowledge is what's going to help
Υπήρξαν
our
κάποιες
country
επιθέσεις
advance.
στο
And this
προφίλ,
knowledge is going to be able
όπως
to be
εκείνες που
made
αφορούν
available
την
to any
Sony,
country,
την Εθνική
anywhere,
Επιτροπή
anywhere,
των
any person who wants to
Δημοκρατικών,
have it.
τον προσωπικό λογαριασμό
And
email
that's
του
one of
Υπουργού
the dreams
Εξωτερικών
that
των ΗΠΑ
Heptopolis has,
και σε
to
μια
have
ηρανική
knowledge
πυρηνική
available to
εγκατάσταση
anybody.
από τον ιό τύπο
So I would like to thank everybody for coming.
το
I think I kept to my 10 minutes.
που
I
διείσδησε
appreciate it.
η